and welcome to the last, probably, in my series of sewing with stretch. And today I'm going to cover commercial patterns that you can use and the pros and cons of the various patterns that I know. Thank you for being there. If you've enjoyed the videos, if you enjoy this video, please like it with a big thumbs up. Please subscribe and remember to click the notifications bell to hear about all the new videos that I upload twice a week on Tuesday and Saturday. The first pattern I'm going to talk about is the one that I'm wearing. This is the Renfrew top from Sewaholic. This is a really great starter pattern. Let me take it out of there. Okay, so I've got the paper pattern, but it is a PDF download as well. It's quite unusual for me to have a paper pattern. I think it was a birthday present. Can you see that every time it's my birthday, my birthday list is entirely sewing related? Yeah. So why do I like this pattern? I like this pattern because it's well drafted. I like this pattern because it's quite simple. It's basic tops. I like this pattern because, I'll insert a picture actually. What you can see is that it has cuffs at the end of the sleeves and it has a band at the hem. So all the going on I have done about hemming knits, you don't have to think about any of that because it's got a band at the end of the sleeves and it's got a band at the bottom, and that is a great thing. If you're nervous about hemming knits or if you're new to hemming knits, you can completely avoid it and you still got a really good professional finish. It's not a pattern that has used a rubbish method just because it's easier. It's a pattern that has been thoughtfully drafted so that you get past that, and most of the patterns that I've chosen actually do that. Having said that, this top, I didn't do that. I didn't do the band, okay? So I've just got a hem here and I've just got a hem here because I didn't want the band. So you can just leave it off. It's super simple. Just don't do the band and then you use less fabric. The view I did was view C. I keep trying to show you this and I've put a picture here. It's view C and it has a cowl neck. Now I like this not just because it's good for smaller busted people like myself, so you can add bulk here and you can afford to add bulk up here, especially if you've got small shoulders too like me. But having the cowl neck, although you do, the seam line is here on this, okay? Although you do have to put in a neckband, once you wear it, it's pretty hidden. So if you do a bit of a dodgy neckband because you're having an off day or you're not used to it, you've not practiced a lot yet, no one can see it, okay? So you could have puckers in there, it could be a bit wavy, it doesn't matter, no one can see. Now I didn't have a lot of this fabric, so my cowl neck is a single layer, and on my overlocker I did a rolled hem, okay, to finish the raw edge. However, the pattern is drafted that this is a double layer, so just like the advantage of using a cuff where you don't have any hemming on view, there would be a fold at this part and then there'd be a double layer that comes back and attaches in here. So it's also really great for beginners, but I like it because it's also very flattering. It has any sleeve length you like. I think this length I chose because I didn't have a lot of fabric. Again, this whole top was defined by not having a lot of fabric. So this is a half sleeve length, I would say. But actually in the pattern pieces, it's got a regular kind of t-shirt length, it's got a 3/4 length, and it's got a full length sleeve, all with cuffs. So it's really versatile. Great pattern, I would really recommend it. And if you want to do something that is like the self-drafted top that I did, that I've based this whole series on, then the scoop neck version from the Renfrew pattern is probably the closest that I know of that you could do. So second, I'm going to show you the Jasper top from Paprika Patterns. I've just put this second because it also uses a cowl neckline, okay? So it's actually a warm day today. Shh, the sun's come out. Don't tell anyone because it might go away. But I don't really want to put it on because it's warm today. Okay, but it has a cowl neckline. This one, because the pattern is drafted for more like a sweatshirt type knit, which by the way are easier than t-shirt knits. The thicker they get, the better they behave, so it's worth knowing. The collar stands up a little bit, so it's not as long as this one and it's not meant to be as drapey. And they also have this detail of a tab, which is super simple. It is basically you sew a rectangular piece at this end and a slightly curved piece at that end. I made a button, and when you sew the button on, you sew it through the other end. This is very poorly shown, but that's the other end of the tab. That's how it attaches. You could do that on here, you know, you could put yourself a little tab on. There's no reason not to do that. Especially if you really messed up the neckline in one place and you definitely didn't want it to ever show, and it was somewhere around here. If you put a tab there, it's never going to show because you've attached it down. I know all the sneaky tricks. I wonder why. It's because I've made all the mistakes. So yeah, this is not as simple a pattern as the Renfrew because it has princess seams here. So it is a little bit trickier if you're entirely new to sewing, but it's not that tricky. And it also uses the method of having a band at the hem and cuffs instead of hemmed sleeves, which you could do or not do depending on the style choice and your appetite for hemming things. So that's the Jasper sweater from Paprika Patterns. I've made that a couple of times and I really like that sweater. Third is the Astoria from Seamwork Patterns. So this is my version. It's not the first version I made. The first version worked out really well, but the fabric bobbled horribly and it had to go in the bin after, well, to be fair, probably after a year or so of wear. It is meant to be a sort of sweater pattern, so it's not a t-shirt, although you could make this in a t-shirt knit. So it has maybe a wider boat neck. No, it's not a boat neck, but it's a wider, slightly wider neck. It is drafted as a cropped top. So on me, I've got quite a short body. On me, the hemband starts here and is only about that long. So for my taste, it's too short for with anything other than a dress. It'd be great over a dress, but I don't really wear dresses. So when I made this, I made the hemband much longer, which is easy to do because you just take the pattern piece, make it longer. You also need to make it wider, especially if you're dealing with a pear shape like me, so that it fits around your hips. But this pattern uses the cunning trick of having that hemband. I hemmed my cuffs, but if you have a subscription to Seamwork and you want to try a knit top, then it's great. And if you don't have a subscription, they're fairly good value. They're all PDF downloads, so they're available to anyone, anywhere in the world. That's the Astoria top. Also worth knowing, there's quite a few hacks online about how to turn this into a cardigan, which I would quite like to do one day on my extremely long list of things I would quite like to do. Stepping up the complexity a little bit now, we have the Fraser Sweatshirt. Now it still uses, because this is a sweater again, not really a t-shirt, it just happens to be what I've made. It uses cuffs at the sleeves and it uses a hemband. Okay, so again, it's avoiding hemming knits. What steps up the complexity of this is the insertions. Now you could do this without an insertion. So if you want a simple sweatshirt for now, and then something you could do more complicated later, it would be very easy to make this simpler by leaving out the insertions. There is one at the sleeve, okay, so that makes a shape like that on the top of the sleeve, which I really like. And there is one at the front, which goes like that. And I actually added the one at the back, so this is one at the back, which just mimics the same at the front, because on the pattern there isn't anything on the back, but I really love this fabric, so I wanted it on the back of me as well as on the front. View B, let's put a picture up. View B is the simplest. It has none of the insertions. View A is the one I just showed you with the, some people think that looks Western style. I guess it depends on the fabric, because you could totally make it cowboy, but I haven't because I've used a particular kind of fabric. And then there is a View C that has a inserted collar, so it's it looks like a collar, but it's not, it's fabric. You can see in the picture. So this is a good pattern if you want one pattern that's going to see you through a number of skills, because all that's tricky in View A, and I haven't made C, but it will be the same in C, is getting nice, crisp, sharp edges on those curves here and at the points of the arm. So that's just a little bit of skill in how to insert shapes within shapes. Okay, so it's a good thing to challenge yourself with if you want it, but you also have view A, which is super simple. Second to last in my roundup is the bowline sweater from Paper Cut Patterns. Okay, so I've made this one 3 times. I'll talk about the basic pattern and I'll show you a picture here, and then I'll talk about my variations. It's a fairly simple raglan shape, and what is particular about it is that it has this kind of origami inspired crease here. I'd say this suits people, again, a bit like the style choice I made here. I can afford and actually get my figure is balanced out by having a little bit more bulk here because my shoulders are narrow and my bust is small. So I think, in my opinion, this adds a bit of bulk over here, which is great. I think if you had a large bust, I am not sure that the draping would work particularly well over a very proportionally large bust. So that is something to bear in mind. Although you could do little catch stitches to keep the fold where you'd want it, other than, you see, I imagine with a larger bust that what would happen is that this fold would just get pushed out. So yeah, it wouldn't be the ideal pattern for that body shape, I don't think. On this variation is I just zigzagged some lace onto the raglan shape. I did it onto the front pattern piece before I sewed it together so that it would get caught into the neckline and caught into the side seam. So it was a super simple hack. The lace is not stretch lace because this is a fairly loose fitting garment. You don't need a fabric with a lot of stretch for this, really just stretching the neckband. So yeah, that's all I did here because I felt I wanted to use this fabric, which I got from eBay. It's almost a t-shirt weight knit, but I just wanted to make it slightly more interesting. Version 2 you'll have seen if you've been watching for a while and you saw my why we pre-wash fabrics video, because I shrank this. Luckily it was savable. It wasn't quite too small, but it's smaller now than it started out. So I didn't hack anything about this, but I have made it in a really bright fabric. Okay, and you can see how this is a chevron that on the fabric it runs vertically, but because of how it's gathered in, the chevrons run in all sorts of different directions, which I quite like. I like this more than I expected to. It was my test garment, and it turned out, can you see how it almost goes like a curve? Turned out much better than I thought it would. On the back, there you go, you can see entirely straight, and on the front a curve. It's worth saying it takes a couple of goes to understand how to do this fold, and if I make another one, I'm not planning to make another one in the near future because I've got 3, but if I do make another one, I will do a little tutorial on how on earth that fold comes together, because all 3 times I've made it, I've got there in the end, but my brain's hurt a little bit as I'm trying to be working it out. And then third iteration of the bowline sweater from Paper Cut Patterns is this one, which is in a proper kind of woolly sweater knit. And no hacks at all on this. What I would say is I have found that the front ends up being a bit longer than the back by the time you've made it, and I don't think it's my cutting out. It might be about the fabrics, but yeah, on here can you see how that's hung, and that's the front and that's the back, so I need to think. If I was being really picky, I guess I'd pick off the hemband and I'd even it up, but yeah, I'm not normally that picky. This pattern is slightly more complicated, mainly because of the weird origami thing. There's not really a way round the neckband, and raglan sleeves aren't more complicated, they're just a different way of doing things. Okay, so don't be put off by raglan sleeves, they're not tricky, and in stretch fabrics particularly, they're very forgiving. Actually, I have 2 more stretch patterns. There is one, I can't remember the name, it's by Schnitzen Patterns. I'll put a picture here. Now I've made this one 3 times, and twice, the first time I didn't like the fabric. That's not true. I did like the fabric. I didn't like how it behaved in the pattern because the fabric was this. But in that pattern, it was really kind of stuck out. That fabric was nowhere near drapey enough for that pattern, so I took it apart. But I did like the shape of it, and the other 2 times I've actually used it and extended it to make a dress version, and I wear it as a night dress, which is why I'm not wearing it in front of you right now, partly because they are in the wash. Okay, but it's a really good, it would make a great summer dress. I just haven't had occasion to make one as a summer dress. I needed pyjamas, so that's what I made. It's got masses of freedom of movement with the arms, which is why I like it as a night dress. And you need a fabric that drapes, okay, because otherwise you get a weird triangle sleeve thing going on, and that's what happened with my first one that failed. It's a really nice, comfortable thing to wear, which is why I wear it to sleep in. But in the right fabric, it would make a fine dress or a t-shirt. Okay, so I thought I'd add that in, and it is super simple. Schnitz and Patterns have quite brief instructions though. They are translated from German because they're a German pattern company. So depends on how much you rely on good instructions as to whether you want to dive in and do that. But in terms, once you've worked out what you're supposed to be doing, it's a very simple. So you can do that in an hour once you have everything prepped. Easy. And then the last pattern, I just thought I'd refer you to Bootstrap Patterns because they have a whole knit section, massive knit section. And the thing about Bootstrap Patterns, it's the pattern company that I got my dress form DIY pattern from, but they do loads of dress patterns, and you can put in your body measurements, and so you won't have to make any pattern adjustments at all, because even though stretch knits stretch, you do still need to take account if you have particular big differences in dress sizes between one part of your body and another. So I have a 2 dress size difference between my waist and my hips. So for something to fit well with a lot of patterns, not all of them, I need to grade out a little bit of the hips. With Bootstrap Patterns, pick the one you like, put in your body measurements, it does it for you. Super simple. Again, like Schnitz and Patterns, the instructions are quite brief because Bootstrap concentrate on the drafting and the automation and that amazing thing of being able to spit out a pattern that is your body measurements, but they don't have an army of people writing instructions. So that was a whistle-stop tour. They are not the only patterns in the world by any stretch. They're just the ones that I know, and the bits and pieces that you can go around now and look at knit fabric patterns and think, okay, well that's got a cuff, that means that I can avoid hemming. That's great. Or, oh no, I'd probably leave off the cuff and all that stuff. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to watch more videos in this whole playlist, the playlist link is going to be there. If you want to watch my latest video, it's going to be here. Something else entirely will be down there. And if you click here, then you'll be able to subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for being there. Bye for now.